Hello, this is Denton Yoder, instructor for BSE-2304, the Biological Systems Engineering CAD class. In today's class, we're going to do a quick lab on, let me start a new blank drawing with the AutoCAD template, a new class on line types and hatch patterns. So to start it off, I went to an AutoCAD template, so I didn't have all those civil layers, just a plain old AutoCAD. And I'm going to explain real quickly why I had you set up a workspace with your name. So now that I switched to an AutoCAD template and I want to do AutoCAD stuff, I want a different menu. Instead of the Civil 3D menu, I'm going to type in menu and switch to the AutoCAD menu. That's going to give me the default setup for AutoCAD. But I have a workspace pre-made, so I can just restore my workspace and I'm back to my menus and the pull down menus and everything I want. That way I have my map pull down. I have everything I want. But anyway, jumping into it. Line types. If I do a parenthesis find file space AutoCAD.line with quotes around it, it'll tell me the folder under my user profile in Windows, App Data Roaming, Autodesk Civil 3D, English Support. Well, luckily I have a browser that's already there. I have a dozen files that are named AutoCAD. If I did not have my view settings set to show file name extensions, you couldn't tell which one was which. They're all identical. So make sure in your view settings that you tell it to show extensions. And you probably had to show hidden files in order to even get here. Okay, so I can't remember if we talked about the PGP yet. So I'm gonna flash back just a hair and talk about the PGP first. The pig pen, as I like to call it. Yeah, I know we talked about this. The pig pen has definitions of macros that we use. And we use this right at the beginning of class to make our own macros or identify what that you had to type. So if I want chamfer, it's CHA. And if I want boundary, it's BO. If I want the command line version, it's -BO. Okay, and BR is break. So anyway, that was the pigpen file. Another file that's cool to look at is the unit file, AutoCAD.unit. And it starts off with some definitions. Meter, kilogram, second, ampere, Kelvin, and candela, and Celsius, Rankine, Fahrenheit, grams, newtons, pascals, and joules, and what their equivalents are. They're all two-line definitions, the name, asterisk in the name, and then what it is. So if we go into units of time, century, day, decade, fortnight, hour, millennia, once you have a definition, it can utilize it. And units of length might be more interesting. I doubt we use cables and chains much anymore. But feet, the way this notation works, commas separate optional notations, and kind of the same as the parenthesis. So this is saying I can type foot, feet, or I can type FT, or I can just use the foot tick. So those are all valid for foot. And of course, it had meters that was at the very top. So we can convert between any units that are in here. We have units of area. Okay, acres, airs, barns, centaurs, hectares, roods. Well, a rood is actually a quarter acre. Anyway, bunches and bunches and bunches and bunches. I'll let you go through that on your own. I noticed there weren't any units of pressure, so back when I was doing this for a living, I used to add my own units of pressure in there. So how to use that, if I type parenthesis CV unit and then a value, I like to make the value a real number by putting a .0 on it, so I could say 1.0. I'm sorry, they're doing construction around here. I'll have to do this again later. I'm going to say acre feet to gallons, and poof, I've got the number of gallons in an acre feet. So I find this very useful, especially converting square footage to acres. But you can convert all kinds of stuff in here. So that was that one. Moving on from that, another file that's in that folder is the LIN file. This is how you define line types. So I love construction. So a good example in here is hidden. It's two-line definitions again. Asterisks in the name. After the name, there's a comma and what you want to show on the screen when you're selecting it. And then what it's defined as, a comma, and then a repetition pattern. They never invented B, so everything's an A. So what we're seeing here is a 1/4 inch, comma, and a -1/8 inch. And so what this is saying is a hidden line is a 1/4 inch solid with an 1/8 inch gap. And that is one repetition of a hidden line definition. And as long as a line is at least 3/8 long, it will split the difference on the first number and put the dash in the middle. And then the longer it goes, every 1/4 inch you're going to have an 1/8 inch gap. And that's just how a definition works. It's kind of like a programming language. It's not magic. It's how it's programmed. The other thing you can use is a period or a 0, and that's considered a dot. So a dot is a dot with a 1/4 inch gap. Now, in the early days, they wanted to be more flexible with these, so they made two additional copies of every definition. You got a half-size copy, so a .2 is an 1/8 inch gap, and a dot times 2 is a 1/2 inch dot, or 1/2 inch dash between each dot. So everything's got 2 extra copies. We do line types. Let's make our own. But before we do, let's look through some more. The ISO ones. Here's a ISO that is a 12 and a -3. Well, as you can tell, 12 inches with a 3-inch gap, that's a pretty big dash. It's metric. Anytime it says ISO on it, it's talking about a metric definition. So typically in my normal drawings, I'll avoid all the ISO line types. Then we have some complex ones, and I love these. I'm going to take the hot water one, the definition, and copy it. And I'm going to come down and paste it. And instead of calling it hot water, I'm going to call it fence, and I'm going to put my initials on it, fence DY. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to say it's a dash 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 dash, a capital X, dash 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 dash, capital X, dash dash. And you kind of get the idea. I could copy and paste; it would be more accurate. The definition for a fence DY is going to be. I'm going to change this to a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to take off the gap because I don't want a gap. And then it says, what text do you want to have in here? Where it did have an HW, I'm going to change it to a capital X. Size is a 1/10 inch. I don't actually remember anymore what the U stands for, but the X and Y is an offset. So I'm going to do like a minus 0.05 for the X and Y offset, which should center my X pretty much on the line that it's drawn on. And then at the end, I'm going to not do the negative, but I'm going to put another 1/4 inch on the end. The reason I'm putting a 1/4 inch on the end instead of just stopping is it doesn't include the text in its evaluation of a line type, and it needs to have 2 components. So I'm doing a 1/4 inch at the beginning, piece of text, and a 1/4 inch, and it's going to say, oh, you've got at least 2 components, I'm good, and it'll repeat that. But I didn't put any gaps at all. It's just going to be an X on the line. I'm going to save that file, save, close. So when I'm doing my layers, I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to make a hidden layer, a center layer, a fence layer, and my colors, I don't know, give me a hidden line of blue, light blue. Give me a center line, I'm going to leave it white. Fence, I'm going to make that a light gray. When I go over to line type, it says all you got's dash, dude. That's it. -2, and that's it. Well, it's funny. -2 is a half-size dash, which is exactly the same as hidden, which is hilarious. But anyway, I'm going to hit load, and it's going to load up all the line types. And if I scroll past all the ISOs, I can just grab the first one, down the bottom, shift and grab the last one. Yeah, reload it. I should have all my line types in here, and I'm on fence. So I'm going to go down to fence, and I have a fence DY. And I'm going to go to my center line, and it's going to be center. And I'm going to go to my and hidden. So now I have some line types defined, and I can pick what line type I want or what layer I want to be on. Put an arc in, and you'll notice as long as I draw at least long enough to get 1 repetition, it'll do the line type. If you go smaller than 1 repetition, it won't. Another interesting thing is on a polyline, there's a setting called PL-Gen, polyline gen, which depends on your setting. It either evaluates from the beginning to the end to put the line type, or it evaluates segment by segment. So evidently my setting right now is segment by segment. PL-Gen, unknown. Okay, so it must not be an environment setting. It must be part of the polyline. If I go to the properties of that polyline, line type generation, they call it. If I enable that, that'll turn on polyline gen, and now that line type is evaluated over the entire length instead of segment by segment. That's kind of a weird setting. Okay, moving on. Let me do my fence line, because I like my fence line. I'm going to do a polyline, and I've got my fence line. I want to do a hidden line, draw a line, draw an arc. Works great. So it's going to do on a hidden line, it's going to do a 1/4 inch solid and an 1/8 inch gap. That's what it's going to do. Well, what if I'm drawing something that's huge, like a football field? Or what if I'm drawing something else that's humongous, a site plan? Well, the line types are all overruled by LT scale. LT scale of 2 doubled everything. 4 doubled everything, which affected everything in the drawing. LT scale 1, back to normal. So LT scale is a multiplier for all of your line type settings. There's also a paper space. There's also a paper space LT scale, PSLT scale. You by default would typically set LT scale to 1. And if PSLT scale is turned on, every M view that you make on your layout will set its own scale independently based on the scale of the M view. So PSLT scale is big. One more thing, if you look at the properties window, every line that you draw, or polyline or whatever, can have a line type scale override. So we've got LT scale, which is what we typically will always use, but you can have an independent line type scale on one individual object or however many individual objects you want in the properties window. I'm going to also, while I'm here in this screen, I'm going to hit escape again. Get my cursor back, escape. You'll notice that my color, my line type, and my line weight, and my transparency, and my material are all set by layer. That's typically the way I teach this class, where every object is controlled with my layers. So I control my colors, line types, line weights, transparency. I control all those things in the layer dialog box. I consider it evil to go in here and set it to red or set your line type to hidden. If you do that, everything a person draws is going to be red and hidden. That's just mean. I think it is much more professional to leave everything by layer and let the layer chart control all the colors, layers, line types, that type of thing. Okay, one more topic to jump into real quick. Hatching. So I probably am going to go back to layer 0 so I don't have a line type. And I'm going to draw a couple objects, a couple circles, a couple lines. If you played, close that, draw a line through it. If you've played with hatching, if you type H for hatch and you click a spot, it solid fills it. Bingo, done. That's kind of cool. But what you might want if you do hatch and click in here is to pick a different pattern. And if the pattern is too small, you can set the scale of the pattern. I'm going to put a scale of 4 on this one, tab, and that helped out a good bit. So that's ANSI 31. Over here, I'm going to put ANSI 32. But I get 32 on both. Oh, it's doing them both. I'm going to escape. Delete that. Let me do hatch ANSI 31 on this one, and I'm going to hit enter to OK that. I'm going to hit enter again to repeat it. ANSI 32 over here. You can do close as well as just hitting enter. Hatch again. one that I really like is brick. And I'm going to put the scale back to 0, or to 1, sorry, 1, and do brick in here. And these brick are 8-inch, so they're huge. Let me enter that. Enter to get back into it again. Where's parquet? I do this one, I'll oftentimes put on a 45. Okay. I'm going to do a stretch command to stretch the bottom half of these objects down. And these objects are associative. So when my boundary changed, the hatch updated. Love this stuff. Now, this all kind of seemed like magic, but once again, it's really just a text file. If we go back to our file browser, there's an AutoCAD.pattern, AutoCAD.pat. Looking in it, it says solid has a dummy fill. It's just saying, hey, ignore that. ANSI 31, it's a 2-line definition, ANSI 31. And then the next line is saying what angle. It's saying what angle should the line be, what is the base point for the line, and what is the repetition spacing. So my ANSI 31 is on a 45. It's based on 0, 0, and the repetition is 0 in the X, 1/8 inch in the Y. So what an ANSI 31 is going to look like is, if you measured straight up, it would be an 1/8 inch going up, times whatever scale I set it. Okay, ANSI 32 is a double line. If I go back to my pattern file, ANSI 32 has a 45 degree at 0, 0 with a vertical 3/8 repetition. Okay, it has a second definition line. It's also on a 45, whose X coordinate is offset just a little bit, more than 1/8, less than 1/4. I don't know what the equivalent of 0.176776695 is. That's interesting. But anyway, so it's saying one line with a 3/8 offset, a second line offset to the right of it with the same 3/8 offset. So what you're going to get on the screen is a double line pattern. Well, what's this parquet thing doing? You know? Okay. Or what's this block thing doing? Okay, let's go look at the file. If we look at the file, here's the 8-inch block. It's saying give me a horizontal line based on 0, 0 with a 8-inch vertical offset. 0 in the X, 8 in the Y. So that is a horizontal line every 8 inches across it. Okay, now we need the vertical line. So at 90-degree angle, which would be vertical, also starting at 0, 0, but it's going to have an offset of 8 inches horizontal and 8 inches vertical. Okay, so that means that one is here, and the next one's going to be over 8 inches and up from there, and then over 8 inches and up from there. So the duplicates are going to be that way. But it has a line pattern so that it only shows 8 inches solid, 8 inches off. Doing that in the file is down here on the end. So that is a line type. So you got an angle, an origin, an offset, and a line type. And with those 4 things, we've got a repetition that will draw the blocks. If you can get into some stuff that's really wacky. Here's one, the parquet floor. The parquet flooring pattern. It's a boatload of lines with different repetitions. And that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 vertical lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 horizontal lines. They're offset 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. And that's their origins. These will be the offsets are 12 and 12 or 12 and minus 12. And that's draw 12, skip 12. That's the parquet floor. Oh, that was this one. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines going that way. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines going that way. Okay. That's it for this lab. Just wanted to show making my own line type. See why pattern files are not magic. And make sure you remember how to switch your menus around. If you do menu back to Civil 3D, it's great, but I don't have my buttons. So I have my workspace. I can go back to my personal workspace and I can get all my buttons. Cool. All right. Sorry about the construction noise. Take care. Bye-bye.